Our guests tonight are sick to their stomachs, I'm guessing. Their podcast, unfortunately, did not save America, but they will keep trying. From Pod Save America, please welcome Jon Favreau, Jon Lovett, Dan Pfeiffer, and Tommy Vietor. You've turned to alcohol for comfort, I see.
Correct, yeah.
I'm okay. I'm good right now, but that guy over there will probably take a little nip if you have it. Yeah. How is everyone?
Great. Thanks for having us tonight. Wonderful night to be here.
Great time.
So happy.
Thanks for not canceling.
We thought about it.
Honestly, were you surprised by the outcome last night?
Yeah, if we were not surprised, we wouldn't have said yes to this before the election.
That makes sense.
Yeah, going in, it was a 50-50 race, and we were hopeful, but obviously very disappointed.
You know, they say it's a 50-50 race, but what we learn again and again and again is that we don't actually know that. We don't actually have any idea of what the numbers are going to be. And yet, every single time we follow these polls, we listen to the Nostradamus of pollsters, and Iowa comes out, and then we just forget it 2 years later again. I mean, have you had this discussion where you vow not to go for this anymore?
Yeah, we had it in 2016, we had it in 2020, and fourth time will be the charm, I think.
Right.
They were pretty close, though. Like, they said it was like a 1 to 2 point race, and that's what it ended up being, just not on our side.
But would you agree with the idea that pretty close means nothing?
Yeah, yes.
Because
horseshoes and hand grenades. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think I think the polls, right? People look to the polls to tell them how to feel, and we should stop doing that, right?
Yeah.
Because all we knew going into this is that if the polls were a little off in one direction, Kamala Harris would be president. If they were a little off in the other direction, Donald Trump would be president. This was one of the many likely outcomes. We're just living in the one we were hoping wouldn't happen, and so we were combing through the information, looking for ways in the days before the election to validate feeling hopeful, plus feeling hopeful because we felt like Kamala Harris was closing in a really strong way, and Donald Trump was meandering around the stage talking about killing various enemies. And we thought, well, that's a good sign, right? That's what you hope to see.
Yeah.
But it turns out it wasn't enough, and so here we are.
And now being some of his enemies, it seems like a bad position to be in. Do you think that this is do you think this outcome is better than if it went to the House and the House voted Trump in?
On some level, yes. I mean, I think a definitive outcome leaves no question. I mean, I don't think anyone would want to see a liberal January 6th. This is not.
Speak for yourself, Tommy.
Yeah, it's nice we don't have to go through another insurrection, but everything else is awful.
If Kamala Harris shows some courage, Kamala Harris can be president. She is vice president. It's her job to certify the election. And I have questions
Don't do it.
about what I've seen in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan. And I just think we need to open it up for a discussion to at least find out what the hell is going on.
Remember the thing Jimmy just said about the enemies list?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm below Jimmy, and I feel like I'll just watch what happens to him before I pack.
Do you guys, did you watch together last night?
We were all together.
At someone's house or?
We were in our office.
Oh, in the office, just in case of diarrhea?
Yeah, there was plenty. And usually the way election night goes is you start on election day hearing anecdotes of great turnout. We heard there's great turnout in Philly. There's great turnout in Milwaukee. And so then you get excited about that, even though you're not supposed to. And then we get exit polls. And then you start looking at the exit polls and you start getting excited about those, even though you're not supposed to. And then finally you start seeing county by county coming in. And as we started looking at the counties coming in, we were like, ooh, this could be.
Yeah.
At what point in the evening did you know that we were in a lot of trouble?
And when Florida came in, there's one county in Florida, it's Osceola County, that is 50% Latino and 33% Puerto Rican. And it moved 14 points in Trump's direction. And that was the warning sign that something was afoot, right? And certainly that the joke at the Madison Square Garden was not going to win us the election. So that's when I got a pit in my stomach.
Yeah, there was a lot of people. There were a lot of people who felt that joke was a turning point of some kind. And did you feel like that turned out to be entirely a media creation?
Yep.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, there was some anecdotal evidence of Latino communities, Puerto Rican communities in Pennsylvania where folks were offended. But the reality in this election was Trump did better than his 2020 number in 90% of the counties in the country. So it was just a broad-based, countrywide win. There was not, one community or sort of pocket that was going to deliver the election to Kamala Harris. He just beat her everywhere.
And my question is, why? Do you have any theories that you feel strongly about?
I mean, we got to sort of wait for all the data to come in, but I think overall, post-pandemic inflation has been causing incumbents all over the world to lose, on every continent, every party, every political persuasion, and most people in this country, they've been saying it for the entire Biden administration, that they're tired of high prices, and even though inflation's come down, the prices are still up, their wages aren't keeping up. And so you go into an election where 75% of the people in an exit poll said that they experienced moderate or severe hardship because of inflation over the last year. Joe Biden's approval rating was 40% going into the election. And so when you have those headwinds, what Kamala Harris was trying to do was so difficult that she couldn't overcome the really difficult political environment created by the inflation that hit every country.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
There's a lot of people that respond in a moment like this to say, look, what happened confirms everything I thought before. Every criticism I had of the Democratic Party is validated by what I saw. You see that from the left, and then from the right, you see every reason I got behind Donald Trump, every annoyance I have with people who I say are woke is the reason Donald Trump won re-election. But I think right now, all we can really say is that we were overwhelmed by the power of dissatisfaction with the status quo, and that Donald Trump and those who support him were very much able to exploit that in a cynical way. So it is a victory for the cynicism of those who back Donald Trump, and it is a sign of how much people were dissatisfied by the status quo. But this was not a collective decision to embrace Donald Trump. In fact, we already know that the majority of people who talked to in exit polls said they don't like Donald Trump, but he still won the majority of the vote.
How do you feel if you're Kamala Harris right now and you lose to somebody that no one likes?
On a personal level, I'm sure it's absolutely devastating, but also, she had 107 days to run a campaign. That is unprecedented. She had to introduce herself to the country. She had to deal with the fact that I think 2/3 of the country felt like we were on the wrong track. Joe Biden's approval rating was extremely low. There was broad-based anger about the economy. So she had about as tough a job coming into that race as one could have. And I think did exceptionally well. We know that in the states that were contested, the battleground states, the margin was smaller than in the states where the race was not contested, meaning Donald Trump did better in places like New Jersey, New York than he did in Pennsylvania. That means that voters who saw Kamala Harris, saw her ads, were contacted by her field program, liked her, and were more likely to support her. But the headwinds were just so great that she couldn't beat him.
Those damn headwinds, they get you every time.
Always.
All right, we're going to take a break, and I have many, many questions for you guys. The guys from Pod Save America are with us. We'll be right back. We're back. The gang from Pod Save America. Kamala Harris, Vice President, called to congratulate Trump today, as did the President, Joe Biden. You guys, for those who don't know, all worked for the Obama administration, speechwriters in various capacities. Is that something that, a call like that, is that planned out in any way? Do you help give thoughts to the president as far as what to say when you make that phone call, or is that something that's entirely off the cuff?
I think it's pretty off the cuff. You do a lot of planning, but the one thing you don't really want to spend a lot of time planning for is the concession phone call.
Mm-hmm. But you do, and correct me if I'm wrong, you do write an acceptance speech and a concession speech.
Yeah, in 2008 for Obama, we had a victory speech, a concession speech, and a too soon to tell speech. But I worked on the victory speech and then the concession speech. I couldn't get my head there, so someone else did that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I would say
one.
too. Yeah. So that's not the plum gig, writing the concession speech.
No, I farmed that one out.
And then President Obama will go through that beforehand to make sure he's conceding the way he wants to concede?
He did not edit the concession speech because he was like, let's save that in case it goes really badly. And so when he thought he was going to win, when it seemed like he was like, all right, I'm going to give you last-minute edits on the victory speech.
Who does more editing, Hillary or President Obama?
Well,
Yeah, you've done both.
they're different. That's interesting. What a good question. I would with President Obama, he was always much more concerned about the overall story and framing the story and making sure the narrative made sense. What was hard about working for Hillary Clinton is she knew every policy. And if you missed a policy, or if there was something that would have made sense in that speech that wasn't in there, she would catch it. And so you were really focused on the details and getting the details right. She saw speeches more as a vehicle for talking about policy. And I think President Obama saw them more as about how you tell the story of the country. And I think one lesson we've learned over the last 8 years is people don't care about policy.
Do you think it would be easier or more difficult to write for Trump?
You know
What
what?
if you don't speak German?
So easy. So I will say this, you know, the speechwriters that write speeches for Trump, you can tell when he leaves the prepared remarks behind and starts kind of riffing because he's annoyed and a bit bored by his prepared remarks. Because I do find like the kind of high dudgeon, kind of like Deutschland über alles vibes, blood and soil. He's like, ugh, kind of boring. I want to talk about some windmills and what RFK is going to do for the women. You know, I want to riff.
Yeah. He does see, you can tell when he decides to stop going with, and then he'll go back to the teleprompter. And I wonder if that drives the speechwriters nuts.
I hope it does. I hope it does.
So the vice president gave a concession speech today, and she said, "Don't worry, we'll be okay," which is not at all what she was saying leading up to this.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to be okay?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you think she thinks we're going to be okay?
What's she going to say? We're not going to be okay.
I
Sort of her swan song. She's got to say something nice before she
It
exits.
would be refreshing. We are not going to be okay.
I think we don't know if we're going to be okay or not going to be okay. But I think what we know is that we have a say in the outcome here. And look, we've beaten this guy once. We've been here before. And then we've come back and, Democrats won the midterms in 2018. Joe Biden beat him in 2020. And so I think we have, even though everything that happened yesterday is awful, we have more experience now and what to do.
But he's not going to run again unless you know something that I don't know. So we won't be able to beat him again.
I think, though, that what she's probably talking about is the history of the country, where imagine you were born in the 1960s.
I was. I don't have to
Imagine. Imagine I phrased that better. And 1963, JFK is shot. 1968, Martin Luther King is shot. Then Robert F. Kennedy is shot, right? The Vietnam War is raging. We've gone through some pretty horrific times in this country, and we've come out on the other side. Now, I say that not to be like, everything's going to be fine and sound sanguine. It's because a lot of people worked really hard to get us out of the other side of those horrible moments in our history. And so I think what she's alluding to is that it's on all of us now to keep fighting and working to get us to a better outcome where we get past Donald Trump and the Trump era and back to a politics that feels more like America that we know.
Yeah, I feel like everybody was caught off guard by Trump's first win. And now we go into this second Trump term a bit more hardened. And I think the first term we were a bit like Sigourney Weaver in the first Alien, kind of trying to figure out what's going on and a bit confused, like, wait, what's popping out of who? And now we're getting into the metal thing and we're like, get away from her, you bitch.
Is there someone that you have in mind? I know it's so, we just had this election to start thinking about the next one, but, I sit there and I wonder, like, okay, who's a great candidate for the next time around?
If we were sitting and having this conversation the day after George W. Bush was reelected, no one would have said Barack Obama's name. That's the candidate who's going to win. So we don't know what's going to happen here. There's been a lot of sort of Monday morning
So you think Barack Obama will be the guy?
If Trump wants to run again, that means Barack Obama can run again, and we'll just have it out.
All right, the guys from Pod Save America, who you can see on YouTube all the time, are here. We have one more segment. We'll come back with the team. We'll be right back. Hi, and we're back with the gang from Pod Save America. What's next for Kamala Harris? Like, what does she do now? Does she go back to McDonald's? I mean, what happens?
There's going to be an open primary to run for governor of California.
Oh, Tommy's
You
just floating
think
that
that
out.
is something?
Flown that? I don't know.
After being vice president to be governor, is that a step backwards?
Not really. She's the biggest state in the nation. I think she could be great at it. It would set her up to run again if she wanted. I don't know. I'm riffing here.
Do you
I think what's
believe?
next is back rubs from Doug for a while. You know?
Yeah, I think Doug could probably use a few himself. I mean, it's, these people, you go through, it's like, I was thinking about it, it's like training for the Olympics at 5 o'clock every morning, every day. You have 2 sessions a day, and then you just don't make the team, and it's over.
Yeah.
And you just go home, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah, although I guess she still is vice president. Do you think Trump will make good on his promise to exact retribution against his enemies?
You asking for anyone in particular? Look, I think the one thing the country has going for us is that Donald Trump is lazy, and the people who will staff this administration are some of the biggest goobers you'll ever meet. And so, to the extent that I am hopeful about anything right now, it is that it is possible that their incompetence could provide some.
Now it's like you're daring them. You realize that.
They might watch this.
Challenging is follow through.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had Democrats texting me last night asking for money. Do you know, you guys worked in the White House. What are they going to do with this money that they want at midnight after the election is over?
I think that's just a scam.
It's offensive. They need to
We gotta stop the text. I'm cursing a lot, but I've been drinking. Whatever. It's a bad day.
We'll overlook it tonight.
We gotta stop the text, and there needs to be consequences. If Ro Khanna texts me one more time. That's it for Ro Khanna.
No more text from Ro Khanna. And it doesn't matter. You can hit delete and report junk
Yeah, what does
over.
stop do? Nothing.
And
Doesn't stop a damn thing.
They've gotten access to every telephone number in the United States.
Yes. Stop does not end.
Do you ever get the feeling you guys have been talking about this pretty much every day for years now, that nothing you say really matters and that the people you're talking to just agree with you already and not much of it breaks through?
Well, that hadn't occurred to me until just now, so thank you for that.
I will say, we went to Nevada and Arizona the weekend before the election, and we talked to people who were there to volunteer and canvass and knock on doors, and we did some door knocking ourselves. And that is the moment where you realize, okay, this does matter. Because when we're in a studio just talking to each other about politics, who knows? But when you are starting to talk to voters and asking them what they're thinking, what their issues are, what they care about, that actually is probably one of the more fulfilling parts of the job, because you can persuade people to change their mind, or you can persuade people to go vote for the first time. And that's sort of why we do this.
Did you, when you were knocking on doors, you feel like you convinced somebody to vote who wasn't going to?
Absolutely not enough, but yeah.
But look, Jackie Rosen right now, as of this recording, is up by a few hundred votes. It's very, very, very close.
Senator from Nevada.
Senator from Nevada.
Yes, I actually went to Nevada and went and did some of that with her there. And you're right, it is the best part, seeing the people who care enough to get out there.
A woman on our team named Nina was doing ballot curing, which is where you help people who sent mail-in ballots that were missing
That are
something,
sick.
a signature or something. You help them fix them so their vote counts. So she drove to a woman's house, knocked on her door, let her know that her signature had not been on her ballot, and that this woman had been told to drive to a polling place to vote provisionally in person. Well, this woman whose house she drove to was blind, didn't have a car, didn't drive. So Nina from our team put her in her car, drove her, they went together, they voted together, and then she brought her home. That.
And that woman voted 3 times.
That woman voted for Donald Trump. But that is called a field program, and that adds up its scale. And when, it's a wave election and Donald Trump's winning by big margins, it doesn't matter. But in these close races, it does actually matter.
Well, thank you guys for being here on this unpleasant evening. You've made it more pleasant, and your show is great. It's called Pod Save America. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can listen to it wherever podcasts are cast. Thanks for being here. We'll be back with Alessia Cara.